Today, we're diving into a topic that honestly hits right at the heart of some of our happiest childhood memories: ice cream. Or, well, at least what you think is ice cream. We're going to be exposing a pretty massive yet incredibly quiet deception that has completely taken over the freezer aisle at your local grocery store. So, I want you to just picture your absolute favorite tub of ice cream for a second. Maybe it's a super rich chocolate or, a classic speckled vanilla bean. It's the one you've been buying for years, maybe even decades. You serve it at birthday parties, you grab a bowl after a long day, and honestly, it might even be sitting in your freezer right this very second. But I kind of need to drop a bit of a bombshell on you here. Legally speaking, that tub you love so much, it might not actually be ice cream at all. Seriously, if you look closely at the packaging, and I mean really, really closely, scanning that tiny, almost microscopic print at the very bottom of the carton, where you'd basically never think to look, you're likely going to find a very specific, carefully chosen phrase: frozen dairy dessert. Companies are quietly hiding this exact phrase on their labels to legally cover themselves. I mean, it looks like ice cream, it's stocked right next to the real ice cream, and it definitely costs the same, but trust me, it is something entirely different. Okay, let's dive right into this. To understand what's happening, we actually have to look at the federal rulebook that dictates exactly what a product has to contain to earn that coveted ice cream title. See, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration regulates food using something they call a standard of identity, and the rules for authentic ice cream, they are incredibly strict. First up, it's all about the fat content. The law actually requires that real ice cream contains a bare minimum of 10% real dairy milk fat. And importantly, that fat has to come from actual cream. And this isn't just some arbitrary number they pulled out of a hat. This 10% minimum is literally what gives true ice cream its signature richness, that luxurious, creamy mouthfeel, and that incredible slow melt-on-your-tongue sensation that we're all looking for. Building on that, the FDA also mandates that the product has to contain at least 20% total milk solids. Now, this rule is here to ensure that the dairy content in your dessert is actually substantial. We aren't just talking about a token splash of milk here, just to squeak by and legally qualify. No, a full fifth of the product needs to be authentic, real dairy solids. And finally, there's a weight requirement, which is super interesting. Real ice cream absolutely must weigh a minimum of 4.5 pounds per gallon. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth does the FDA care about how much ice cream weighs? Well, it's because this rule strictly limits exactly how much air a manufacturer is legally allowed to just pump into the carton. Because without this rule, you could easily end up paying premium, top-dollar prices for a carton that is, well, mostly empty space. So what exactly happens when a massive food corporation decides they want to cut costs, skip that expensive real cream, and pump in a ton of extra air, all while charging you the exact same price? Well, they perform the great freezer aisle switch. They basically swap out the natural ingredients for cheaper chemical alternatives, slap that old, familiar, nostalgic branding on the carton, and quietly change those tiny little words at the bottom. And this brilliantly illustrates that exact bait and switch. When you look at them side by side, the difference is just staggering. Real ice cream has this beautifully short, totally recognizable ingredient list, right? Cream, milk, sugar, maybe some eggs. But the frozen dairy dessert, it relies on cheap skim milk instead of rich cream, and they fill that gap with corn syrup, whey protein, and an entire chemistry set of thickeners and stabilizers, stuff like cellulose gum and carrageenan, just to trick your mouth into thinking it's eating real dairy fat. Now, this is where it gets kind of wild. There's an industry term called overrun, which is basically just the fancy word for whipped air. Now, even legitimate, high-quality real ice cream can be up to 50% whipped air by volume. That's normal. But when manufacturers drop their product down into that frozen dairy dessert category, they can stretch those boundaries way, way further. They essentially pump the carton so full of air that you are quite literally paying full price for nothing. All right, it is time to name some names. Let's take a look at the freezer aisle rogues gallery, including some of those beloved, nostalgic childhood brands that have kind of quietly betrayed our trust. You are definitely going to recognize a few of these. Take Breyers, for example. I mean, this is a brand that built a century-old reputation on a simple, pure pledge of milk, cream, and sugar. But over the years, they've completely altered their recipes for tons of their most popular flavors, dropping them straight into that frozen dairy dessert category. Then we have Dairy Queen. Their famous soft serve actually only contains about 5% butterfat. That's literally half the legal requirement for ice cream. And Blue Bunny's incredibly popular vanilla sandwiches, yeah, they rely on skim milk, coconut oil, and cellulose gum. totally avoiding the words ice cream anywhere on their packaging. And people are starting to notice the backlash to these sneaky changes is very real. Just recently, Breyers actually faced a massive class action lawsuit over its natural vanilla variety. Consumers basically figure out the brand was allegedly using synthetic vanillin, which, get this, is a lab-made artificial flavoring derived from petrochemicals and wood pulp. And they were doing this all while marketing the product with these gorgeous natural vanilla beans right on the front of the package. That little deception, it ended up resulting in an $8.85 million settlement. And unfortunately, the list of offenders really does just go on. You know that iconic Nestlé Drumstick? Well, the very first ingredient listed is dairy product solids, which is basically a highly processed byproduct that's left over after they remove the protein and lactose from milk. Good Humor's famous strawberry shortcake bar? It's mostly non-fat milk and artificial red 40 dye. And those amazing Oreo frozen sandwiches? Legally, they are just a, quote, creme-flavored dessert, packed with processed byproducts and stabilizing gums, not ice cream. Like, what's the motive here? Well, it all comes down to a broader industry trend you've probably heard of called shrinkflation, or in this specific case, quality deflation. The exact reason these massive food corporations are making these hidden downgrades to our favorite treats is, surprise, surprise, entirely driven by their bottom line. Just listen to this remarkably honest admission from the ice cream brand Turkey Hill. When someone actually asked them why their mix-in-heavy stuffed lineup is classified as a frozen dairy dessert rather than real ice cream, they openly admitted it was done to, quote, keep production costs in line. I mean, it is incredibly rare to get such blunt confirmation from a major brand, but it perfectly reveals the overarching corporate profit motive that is driving this entire shift in the freezer aisle. To really put that profit motive into perspective, just look at this number. Industry estimates show that by substituting real expensive dairy fat for cheaper alternatives, synthetic gums, and pumping in all that extra air, companies can actually reduce their ingredient costs by up to 40%. I mean, that is a massive margin improvement for the manufacturer, and it's achieved entirely at the consumer's expense, almost always without us even knowing it's happening. And here's why you really need to be paying attention right now. Due to some shifting government policies and broader deregulatory directives, the FDA has actually proposed potentially revoking 18 different standards of identity for dairy products by July of 2025. If these federal rules are relaxed, that regulatory line separating real, traditional ice cream from these cheap, chemical-heavy substitutes, it could become even blurrier in the very near future. But hey, you don't have to be a victim of this little freezer aisle switcheroo. Now that you know the truth about what's going on, here is exactly how you can make informed choices and totally take back control the next time you're doing your grocery shopping. So the crucial point is just following these 4 simple steps. Number 1, always check the small print on the front for the words frozen dairy dessert. 2, flip it around, look at the ingredient list, and make absolutely sure cream or milk and cream is listed first. 3, literally just count the ingredients. Real ice cream should only have about 4 to 6 natural items, not 20 unpronounceable ones. And 4, stick to authentic brands like Häagen-Dazs, or honestly, even better, check out your local farmers markets and independent creameries where genuine, real ingredients are still the gold standard. And you know, if you really want to have a little fun with this, I highly recommend trying the melt test at home. It's a fascinating little experiment. Just scoop your dessert into a bowl and leave it on the counter. Real ice cream, because it's full of rich, natural dairy, will slowly collapse into this sweet, milky puddle in about 20 minutes. But a fake frozen dessert, it's just going to sort of deflate and weirdly hold its shape for hours because it is literally held together by structural chemistry instead of real melting cream. It's wild to see. So I want to leave you with this final, somewhat urgent question. I want you to go to your kitchen right now, open up your freezer, and look at the carton sitting inside. What does it actually say at the bottom? Because once you see the truth of the frozen dairy dessert deception, you really can never unsee it. Share this explainer with a friend who loves ice cream, and make sure you subscribe so you can join us as we uncover even more hidden secrets waiting right there in your grocery store aisles. Happy hunting out there, and stay curious.